The temple courtyard lay silent, the morning mist rising like ghosts from the earth. Ethan sat cross-legged, his breath uneven, his thoughts spiraling out of control. Master Li's sudden voice cut through the quiet, sharp as steel. Master Li said, "You have strayed from the path, Ethan." The words landed like thunder, shattering the fragile stillness. Ethan's chest tightened, his mind raced with disbelief. He had devoted himself tirelessly, yet here he was, declared astray. His heart pounded, shame rising like fire in his veins. Sarah, watching nearby, gasped softly but said nothing. Daniel smirked, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. Ethan whispered to himself, "How could I have failed so completely?" The weight of the master's words pressed on him, crushing every certainty he thought he possessed. Ethan stumbled to his feet, the courtyard spinning with doubt. His heart pounded as he replayed Master Lyle's words again and again. "Strayed from the path," he muttered, his chest heavy with shame. Sarah approached cautiously, her eyes full of concern. Sarah said, "Ethan, this does not mean you are lost." Ethan shook his head, his voice tight. Ethan said, "How can I continue when my master has declared me astray?" His words quivered, wrapped in fear. Sarah placed her hand lightly on his arm, but Ethan pulled away, retreating into himself. Daniel's laughter echoed nearby, cold and cutting. Ethan felt the sting, like salt pressed into a wound. The morning air, once peaceful, now seemed heavy and suffocating, pressing him into despair. Ethan wandered to the temple's edge, staring into the koi pond. His reflection rippled with every breath, fractured and uncertain. "Who am I if I cannot walk the path?" he whispered. Master Li's voice still thundered in his ears. He clenched his jaw, fists tight, his body trembling. Sarah's footsteps sounded behind him, steady but hesitant. She said, "Ethan, even the strongest trees bend in the wind." Ethan turned sharply, his eyes blazing with pain. Ethan said, "What good is strength if the roots are already broken?" Sarah held his gaze, her calm unshaken, but her silence spoke more than words. The koi swam beneath the water, unbothered, as Ethan's turmoil grew darker. Daniel leaned against a stone pillar, arms folded, his smirk unshaken. Daniel said, "So, the master has seen through you at last." Ethan spun around, anger burning in his eyes. Ethan said, "You know nothing of my struggle." Daniel laughed, sharp and bitter. Daniel said, "Struggle? You chase illusions while the world moves on. You cling to shadows and call them truth." Ethan's fists shook as Sarah stepped between them, her voice calm. Sarah said, "Enough, Daniel. Mocking does not heal." Daniel shrugged, his eyes gleaming. Daniel said, "Truth doesn't need healing. It needs acceptance." Ethan felt the words pierce deeper than the laughter, leaving wounds unseen but raw. The courtyard grew tense, silence pressing against every stone. Master Li remained silent at the far edge of the courtyard, his eyes closed, as if the conflict were only wind in passing. Ethan's breath was ragged, fury giving way to despair. He looked toward his master, desperate for guidance, but none came. Ethan said, "Why do you remain silent?" The words broke into the quiet like glass shattering. Master Li's eyes opened slowly, his gaze steady, unreadable. Sarah placed her hand on Ethan's arm again, grounding him. Daniel stepped back, smirk fading, sensing the weight of silence. Ethan lowered his head, his heart aching from the stillness. The courtyard seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with unspoken truth. In that moment, silence was the loudest voice. Ethan sat cross-legged inside the meditation hall, his robe hanging loosely as he fought to still his restless mind. His breaths came uneven, like a storm trapped within his chest. He whispered, "Why can I not find peace?" His reflection in the polished floor showed tired eyes filled with doubt. Sarah entered quietly, her steps light but her presence steady. She placed a small candle before him, the flame steady against the draft. Sarah said, "Peace is not absent, You must listen even when silence feels deafening. Ethan's head lowered, shame biting deeper. He muttered, every word of the master echoes as failure. The air around him grew heavy, as if his doubt itself thickened the shadows. Sarah remained near Ethan, her voice low, carrying the calm weight of her conviction. Sarah said, the master's words are not chains. They are doors. Ethan looked up, eyes shadowed by confusion. Ethan said, doors to where? I only see walls. Sarah's face softened, her gaze unwavering. Sarah said, even a wall crumbles when struck by patience. Ethan exhaled harshly, rubbing his temple, frustration thick in his tone. The silence between them stretched, filled with unspoken fear. Sarah's hand brushed the floor beside him, steady, grounding. Outside, the wind stirred the bamboo, a whisper that seemed to echo her words. Ethan lowered his eyes again, torn between anger and despair, his spirit trembling like a fragile flame. Outside the hall, Daniel leaned against the wooden frame, smirking as he overheard the exchange. Daniel said, still chasing ghosts, Ethan? Even your silence betrays failure. Ethan rose abruptly, fists clenched, eyes burning. Ethan said, you know nothing of silence. Daniel stepped closer, voice sharp with ridicule. Daniel said, I know enough to see it is eating you alive. Sarah stood, her gaze firm on Daniel, her tone steady. Sarah said, your words carry poison, not truth. Daniel scoffed, brushing her aside with a dismissive gesture. Daniel said, truth is not fragile. It does not break with mockery. Ethan's chest heaved, anger and shame colliding until his body trembled, unable to hold the weight. Master Li appeared in the doorway, his presence quiet yet commanding, robes brushing the floor. Ethan froze, breath caught in his chest. Master Li's voice came calm and deliberate. Master Li said, you will take on a task of patience beyond your measure. Ethan's lips parted, trembling with doubt. Ethan said, I already fail at stillness. How can I bear more? Master Li stepped into the light, his eyes steady. Master Li said, a cracked vessel holds water if it learns to stop resisting. Sarah bowed her head in reverence, while Daniel scoffed quietly, eyes rolling with disbelief. Ethan felt his heart pound, the burden of the task settling like a mountain upon his shoulders. Later, Ethan sat alone in the courtyard, the task weighing on him, though its nature remained unclear. His breath came heavy, as though the air itself resisted entering his lungs. He whispered, I cannot carry this. His eyes shifted to the temple roof where clouds drifted slowly across the sky. Daniel's laughter echoed faintly in the distance, a cruel reminder of doubt. Sarah's words lingered like fragile threads of hope, pulling him from collapse. Ethan said softly, if even silence abandons me, what remains? The courtyard seemed vast, yet every corner pressed closer, suffocating his spirit. He closed his eyes, hands pressed tightly on his knees, feeling the storm of despair coil tighter within. Ethan sat alone in the meditation hall, knees aching, his body rigid as hours passed. The task was simple yet unbearable. Sit still, unmoving, until his breath and thoughts became one. Sweat slid down his temples, his lungs heavy, every muscle begging for release. He whispered, I am breaking. His voice trembled, echoing against the wooden beams. Outside, the wind rattled the paper walls, as though nature itself mocked his weakness. He tried again, inhaling deep, exhaling slow, but his mind screamed louder with each breath. Images of failure burned before him, Master Li's words carving deeper. Ethan muttered, patience is a prison. The silence pressed closer, his spirit cracking under the invisible weight. Sarah entered quietly, carrying a tray with water, her steps soft against the wooden floor. She paused, watching Ethan's trembling shoulders. Sarah said, even rivers carve stone with patience. Ethan snapped his eyes open, voice rough. Ethan said, stone does not feel shame. Sarah's gaze softened, but her words carried firmness. Sarah said, and yet stone endures. Ethan turned away, tears threatening but unfallen, his pride holding them back. Sarah placed the tray before him, the cup steady despite the silence. She whispered, "You do not fail by trembling. You fail by refusing to rise after." Ethan's jaw clenched, but her words pressed deeper than his resistance. Daniel strolled into the courtyard with loud confidence, holding a small scroll as though it were treasure. His voice carried smugness. Daniel said, "While you drown in silence, I find rewards in the real world." Ethan rose slowly, fury sparking in his eyes. Ethan said, "Your rewards are fleeting dust." Daniel smirked, rolling the scroll with practiced arrogance. Daniel said, "Dust shines brighter than emptiness." Ethan's fists tightened, but his body quivered with fatigue. Sarah stepped between them, her tone calm but firm. Sarah said, "Truth cannot be measured by scrolls or coins." Daniel laughed, dismissive, shaking his head. Daniel said, "Truth cannot feed hunger." Ethan's spirit wavered, torn between anger and despair. As evening neared, Ethan wandered outside the gates, his mind clouded with doubt. The air cooled, carrying scents of pine and damp earth. There, a woman appeared, robes travel-worn, her eyes sharp with mystery. Aya said, "Why do you fear breaking?" Ethan startled, heart racing, his voice low. Ethan said, "Because I will not return whole." Aya smiled faintly, her gaze piercing. Aya said, "Shards reflect more light than stone unbroken." Her words lingered, unsettling, as she stepped closer, then past him with silence trailing. Ethan turned, but she was already gone, her presence fading like mist. His heart thundered, confusion and fear colliding with an unshakable sense of awakening. Night fell heavy, the temple courtyard cloaked in shadows, lanterns flickering faintly. Ethan sat on the stone steps, head in his hands, trembling with exhaustion. His voice broke, low and ragged. Ethan said, "I cannot endure this." His fists struck his knees, frustration spilling into the night. Daniel's laughter echoed faintly from afar, salt in an open wound. Ethan's pride collapsed, anger consuming him. He shouted, "Enough!" His voice shattered the silence, startling a flock of birds into the sky. Sarah appeared in the courtyard's edge, her eyes wide with worry, but she said nothing. Ethan's breath came ragged, his chest heaving, his spirit fractured, caught between despair and desperate fire. The dawn returned heavy with silence, painting the courtyard in muted gold. Ethan knelt before Master Li, his body still trembling from the night before. Master Li's gaze pierced like still water, calm yet unyielding. Master Li said, "Your pain is not born from failure, but from clinging." Ethan's breath caught, confusion storming in his chest. Ethan said, "I hold nothing but despair." Master Li's eyes narrowed slightly, his tone sharp as a blade. Master Li said, "You hold the illusion of perfection, and it binds you." The words rang louder than thunder, echoing through Ethan's bones. Sarah bowed her head, a faint smile of recognition touching her lips. Daniel shifted uneasily, his smirk faltering. Ethan sat beneath the old pine tree, his heart unraveling as the truth dug deeper. His fists rested on his knees, trembling as though he were holding invisible chains. He whispered, "All this time, I tried to prove worth by being flawless." His eyes burned, not from anger, but from realization. Sarah sat beside him, her voice steady, carrying quiet strength. Sarah said, "Zen is not perfection. It is seeing the cracks without fear." Ethan's chest rose in a deep exhale, his pride dissolving like mist. He said, "Then I was never broken, only blind." The wind rustled above, scattering needles like whispers of unseen truth. The air felt lighter, his despair thinning into clarity. Sarah leaned closer, her eyes reflecting warmth. Sarah said, "Even the master once trembled before silence." Ethan turned to her, disbelief softening into wonder. Ethan said, "He too?" Sarah smiled faintly, her voice hushed. Sarah said, "Perfection was never his aim, presence was." Ethan's eyes widened, the burden lifting as if a hidden truth had revealed itself. He whispered, "Then I sought the wrong treasure." Sarah placed her hand lightly on his shoulder, her presence grounding. The koi pond nearby rippled as a fish broke the surface, shimmering in morning light. Ethan's reflection no longer looked fractured, but whole, his breath finally steady. As Ethan walked toward the outer path, Aya appeared once more, her presence sudden, like a shadow stepping from wind. Her eyes glinted, sharp and unsettling. Aya said, "You fear failure, yet failure is your teacher." Ethan froze, his chest tightening, words trembling. Ethan said, "But I was told to endure, not to fall." Aya tilted her head, her lips curling in a cryptic smile. Aya said, "The phoenix burns before it rises." Ethan's breath caught, his mind racing as her words carved deeper than he wished to admit. He turned to question her, but she stepped past, vanishing into the mist. His heart thundered, realization flickering within his silence. The courtyard returned to stillness, though Ethan's heart raced with newfound clarity. He whispered, "I was never broken, only bound." His words felt lighter, free of shame. Sarah stood across from him, her eyes soft, understanding his change without words. Daniel lingered at the edge, his usual confidence dimmed, unease clouding his smirk. Master Li stepped forward, silent, his presence enough to seal the truth. Ethan closed his eyes, the burden of illusion slipping away. The temple grounds seemed alive, every sound brighter, every breath fuller. For the first time, peace was not distant, it was within. His silence no longer crushed, it carried freedom. The meditation hall was lit only by lantern glow, shadows stretching long across the wooden floor. Ethan's body quivered as he sat cross-legged, breath ragged. His spirit buckled under the weight of silence. "And," he whispered, "I cannot bear this storm." Sweat dripped down his temple, his robe clinging damp against his chest. His fists dug into his thighs as he struggled to hold still. The stillness mocked him, every heartbeat sounding like failure. He said louder, "I am breaking." The walls seemed to press closer, air thick with unseen weight. His vision blurred, a tremor shaking through his body as he teetered at the edge of collapse. Ethan's strength faltered, and his body collapsed forward, palms striking the wooden floor. His breath came in broken sobs, raw and unrestrained. He cried out, "Enough, I am nothing." His voice cracked, echoing against the hall's emptiness. Sarah rushed to the doorway but froze, her eyes wide with grief, sensing this moment was his alone. Daniel stood behind her, his smirk gone, unease written across his face. Ethan slammed his fists again, tears spilling freely now, pride shattered. He gasped, "I surrender." The words felt like fire leaving his chest, a release of years of burden. Silence swallowed him, but for the first time it felt open, not crushing. The silence stretched, deep and vast, as Ethan remained bowed. His sobs eased, replaced by long shaking breaths. In that stillness, something shifted inside him. He whispered, "I am empty, yet I am whole." A strange calm flooded his chest, soft and weightless. His body trembled not from fear, but from release. Sarah clasped her hands, her lips trembling into a smile of quiet relief. Daniel's eyes widened, unsettled by what he saw. Ethan lifted his head slowly, his eyes no longer clouded by rage or despair but clear, as if washed clean by surrender. He said softly, "Peace was never lost, it was hidden beneath me." Master Li entered silently, his steps echoing softly against the wooden floor. His presence filled the hall without a word. Ethan turned, meeting his gaze with steady eyes for the first time. Master Li's face remained calm, but his silence carried acknowledgement. Ethan bowed deeply, his voice steady yet humble. Ethan said, "I see now breaking was the path." Master Li inclined his head slightly, his robe shifting as he folded his hands. Sarah exhaled softly, her eyes wet with relief. Daniel looked away, shaken by the quiet strength before him. The hall glowed brighter, as though the lantern flames rose higher to witness the moment. Ethan sat once more in meditation, but now his breath flowed with ease, his shoulders light. He whispered, "Peace is not found. It is remembered." The words lingered like a prayer. His chest rose and fell with calm rhythm, silence now a companion, not a prison. Sarah watched from afar, her smile quiet but radiant, sensing his transformation. Daniel lingered at the edge of the hall, conflicted, his face caught between disbelief and longing. Master Li closed his eyes, content, his role fulfilled without a word. Ethan opened his eyes, a faint smile on his lips, as if he had been reborn. The storm within had finally stilled. The morning sun spilled gently over the temple grounds, painting the stones with golden warmth. Ethan walked slowly across the courtyard, his steps steady and calm. His breath moved like the rhythm of the wind, unforced and free. Birds sang softly in the distance, their song no longer drowned by turmoil. He whispered, "The silence is no enemy, it breathes with me." His lips curved into a faint smile, light and unburdened. Sarah stood by the garden's edge, watching him with quiet pride. Daniel lingered nearby, arms crossed, yet his usual sharpness faltered. For the first time, Ethan's presence radiated peace, a quiet fire stronger than any storm. The pine trees swayed gently as Ethan paused beneath them, his hand brushing the rough bark. He whispered, "The world has always breathed with me, I simply did not listen." His shoulders relaxed, his body grounded like the roots beneath his feet. Sarah approached quietly, her voice soft yet steady. Sarah said, "You carry no weight now, only stillness." Ethan turned, his eyes clear as he nodded, the corners of his lips lifting slightly. Daniel watched from a distance, shifting uneasily, his smirk nowhere to be found. The wind carried fallen needles across the ground, scattering them like reminders of impermanence. Ethan felt no fear, only the ease of acceptance. By the koi pond, the water shimmered under the sun, every ripple catching light. Ethan knelt at the edge, his reflection no longer broken but whole. He whispered, "The water does not resist its ripples, and I will not resist mine." Sarah sat beside him, her smile bright but calm, her presence like the surface itself, still yet alive. Daniel remained behind, arms folded, his eyes troubled, as though searching for answers in silence. Ethan dipped his hand into the pond, watching circles expand outward without hesitation. His breath followed their rhythm, smooth and easy. For the first time, peace no longer felt fragile, it felt eternal. Later, Ethan crossed the stone bridge toward the temple gate, his steps measured like flowing breath. The wind lifted his robe slightly, carrying with it a sense of release. Sarah followed a few steps behind, her eyes calm, her spirit lightened by his presence. Daniel stood apart, leaning against the gate pillar, his face shadowed with unease. Master Li appeared near the bridge, his posture steady, his silence deep as the mountains. Their eyes met, no words spoken, yet the truth passed clearly between them. Ethan bowed slightly, his movements slow and sincere. For the first time, he carried not burden, but freedom. The courtyard seemed alive, every sound brighter, every leaf sharper in the sunlight. Ethan stood at its center, his hands resting loosely at his sides. He whispered, "Peace is not reached, it is lived." His voice carried no effort, only truth. Sarah watched with warmth, her calm radiating in return. Daniel shifted restlessly, as though torn between doubt and longing. Master Li remained near the temple steps, his presence steady, his faint smile the only acknowledgement. The wind stirred softly, lifting fallen leaves into a gentle dance. Ethan breathed deeply, no longer a seeker chasing answers, but a man who had found stillness within. The river flowed steadily beyond the temple walls, its waters glowing with the colors of the setting sun. Ethan sat on a smooth stone at the bank, his robe falling loosely around him. His gaze lingered on the horizon where gold met crimson. He whispered, "The river moves forward without resistance, and so shall I." His chest rose with calm breath, each exhale blending with the sound of flowing water. Sarah approached, her footsteps soft on the grass, her face serene. She sat quietly beside him, no words needed. Daniel lingered at a distance, arms folded, though his eyes softened as if caught in reflection. The moment carried weight, yet it felt lighter than air. The air cooled as the evening deepened, fireflies glowing faintly above the tall grass. Ethan lowered his head, watching ripples drift outward from a falling leaf. He whispered, "Even endings are beginnings." Sarah turned her eyes to him, her lips curving with quiet recognition. Sarah said, "The path does not end, it only changes." Daniel stepped closer, his smirk replaced by uncertainty. His voice came low, strained. Daniel said, "Perhaps silence is not emptiness after all." Ethan looked toward him, offering no judgment, only stillness. The river carried on, unconcerned, its voice soft as a lullaby. The koi pond shimmered in moonlight, lanterns flickering softly around the temple garden. Ethan stood at the edge, hands loose by his sides, his reflection steady and whole. Sarah walked behind him, her smile unspoken but warm. Daniel remained nearby, silent, his eyes fixed on the still water. Ethan whispered, "Wholeness is not built, it is uncovered." His voice carried into the night, soft but unshakable. The pond rippled gently, as if echoing his words. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, letting the peace settle in her heart. For the first time, Daniel did not mock, but listen. The temple courtyard lay bathed in silver moonlight, shadows soft across the stones. Ethan walked slowly across, his steps measured but unforced. Sarah followed at a distance, her eyes bright with quiet understanding. Daniel leaned against a pillar, his posture uncertain, caught between pride and curiosity. Master Li stood at the far end, motionless, his calm presence more radiant than words. Ethan stopped, bowing deeply, his voice low. Ethan said, "I see now. There was never anything to chase." Master Li inclined his head, his faint smile like a seal of truth. The air grew still, carrying their silence like a prayer. Beyond the temple walls, the horizon burned with the last glow of twilight. Ethan stood still, gazing outward, his breath merging with the evening air. His lips parted in a whisper, soft but resolute. Ethan said, "I am not lost, I am here." The words hung gently, carrying into the quiet fields. Sarah stopped beside him, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. Daniel lingered behind them, his eyes heavy with unspoken questions. Master Li remained further back, his stillness like a mountain. The wind stirred gently, carrying leaves into the distance. In that moment, silence spoke louder than all words, and peace endured.